Good morning, students. Welcome to VerandaRace. Yesterday, the session could not take place because of some reasons, so I have kept the session today. This is a thorough discussion of the Hindu editorial of yesterday, that is 9th of March. So today we'll have two sessions. One is now 6:30 in the morning of the Hindu editorial of 9th March, and the 10th March will take place at 7 o'clock in the evening. Fine. So let us start the session. So thorough discussion of the editorial March 9. So we'll start with multiple errors. So this question has some parts. This question has some parts which may have two or more errors. We have to find that part which is error free. We have to find that part which is error free, or those parts which are error free. Let's start the question. Former diplomat talked about his academic life. Former diplomat talked about his academic life. No error. Which began on a Malayalam medium school. So it should be began in a Malayalam medium school. So it means B is incorrect. So whichever options have B should be marked as not the answer. At Kaya Mukulam and shared. It should be shared. Shared. So C also has an error. B and C have an error. So A and D will be the answer. His views on India's education system. So A and D. So this is correct option. Former diplomat talked about his academic life, which began in a Malayalam medium school at Kaya Mukulam, and shared his views on India's education system. So A and D are correct. The rest are wrong. Fine. Moving ahead. Since it's a past tense sentence, that's why everything will be in the past tense. The focus will be to hire data analysts whom can. It should be who can. So A has an error. So all options which have A are ruled out. So these two are ruled out. You have to choose between C and D and B and C. Okay. Significantly enhance productivity by seeing. So B is correct. So answer will be B and C. Pattern in the data and developing. B and C are correct. Better ways of doing things. It should be better ways of doing things. Better ways of doing things. So error is in A and D. The answer will be B and C. B and C are correct. Okay. I think you're getting my point. So first in A it will be who can. So A has an error, and D the error is better ways of doing things. So error would be in part A and D. So the answer will be B and C. Next question. She led 10-8 before entering the break with a 3-point advantage after producing another scintillating cross-court smash on her rival's backhand. No error. All of the above are correct. All of the above are correct. A, B, C, D are correct. Okay. In scenes similar to the World Cup Championship final in Glasgow in August, this match went down. It should be went down. So C has an error. Engaged in a battle for attrition and nerves. So in scenes similar to the, okay, it should be in a scene similar to, because it talks about the World Cup final, right? It talks about the World Cup final. So error is in A and C. The answer will be B and D. In a scene similar to the World Championship final in Glasgow in August, this match went down to the wire as the duo engaged in a battle for attrition and nerves. Next question. The 22-year-old came agonizingly close to clinching the title before finishing runner-up once again in she third. It should be in her third. So the 22-year-old came agonizing close to clinching the title before finishing the runner-up once again in her third major tournament following last year's Rio Olympics and this year's Glasgow World Championship. So error is in part B and D. So answer A and C will be the answer. Next question. Now we'll go to the editorial of today, that is clear signals. China's claim that the US Indo-Pacific strategy is aiming to create an Indo-Pacific version of NATO. So China claims that the US Indo-Pacific strategy is aiming to create an Indo-Pacific version of NATO. NATO is a North Atlantic Treaty Organization which America, US, France, America, UK, France are members. So China is claiming that the US Indo-Pacific strategy wants to create a NATO of this region, Indo-Pacific version. as the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi put it on March 7, is not new. So, China's claim is not new, in which it claims that the US Indo Pacific strategy wants to create a similar version of NATO in this region. Indeed, even as long as 15 years ago, during the first iteration of the now revived India, iteration means repetition, utterance and repetition. Utterance means speaking something with repetition. So, indeed, even as long as 15 years ago, during the first iteration of the now revived India, now revived means the new India, the new India. So, indeed, even as long as 15 years ago, during the first utterance of the now revived India, Australia, Japan, US Quad, Beijing warned of an impending Asian NATO. Impending means certain to happen. Certain to happen. So Beijing had already warned of an certain to happen Asian NATO, which of course never materialized. So it had warned that the impending Asian NATO will happen, kind of North Atlantic Treaty Organization in the Beijing region, in the Indo-Pacific region, but this never materialized. This never happened. The latest statement does, however, assume significance in the current global context. The latest statement made by Beijing, that is by the Chinese Prime Foreign Minister, does, however, assume significance in the current global context. It has some significance in the current global context and in between or amid the crisis in Ukraine. So during the crisis in Ukraine, whatever statement has been made by the Chinese Foreign Minister holds some water. It has some significance. Mr. Wang Yi, the Foreign Minister of China, speaking in Beijing during the National People's Congress, accused the US of stoking geopolitical rivalry. So, stoking is like when we say, just a minute, let me open the YouTube group. Whoever are online, I need to check. It's early in the morning, so not everybody will be online, I guess. Okay, so Mr. Wang, speaking in Beijing during the National People's Congress, accused the US of stoking. So stoking would mean adding fuel to fire. Adding fuel to fire. So if a fire is burning and you stoke the fire, it means you add fuel to fire. You increase the intensity of the fire. Let me increase the wait. So stoking geopolitical. Yes, good morning. OS, I don't know who is this. So stoking geopolitical rivalry by formally forming exclusive clubs. So stoking means adding fuel to fire. So US is adding fuel to fire in the geopolitical rivalry. Geopolitical means geographically and politically active countries. It is trying to worsen the relationship between them by forming exclusive clubs. He said by strengthening the Five Eyes intelligence alliance and peddling the Quad. Peddling means selling illegally. Some illegal activities are known as. Good morning, Danny Vijay Balan. So, Beijing, Mr. Wang, speaking in Beijing during the National People's Congress, accused the US of stoking, increasing the intensity of worsening the geopolitical rivalry by forming exclusive clubs. He said that the strengthening the Five Eyes intelligent alliance and peddling the Quad, piecing together AUKUS and tightening bilateral military alliances, the US was leading what he called the 5-4-3-2 formation in the region. So AUKUS means what? Australia, UK and US alliance. AUKUS. Australia, UK, US alliance. So basically the point is that the Foreign Minister of China, Mr. Wang Yi, is blaming US, and it was leading a formation in the region, trying to make clubs, trying to make exclusive clubs by assigning different countries to a particular unit. Okay. So the broader goal, he said, was to establish an Indo-Pacific version of NATO. Again, he says the same thing, that the broader goal of US is to form a Indo-Pacific version of NATO. In recent weeks, Beijing has repeatedly blamed NATO for the crisis in Ukraine. So Beijing is blaming NATO for the crisis in Ukraine while claiming to stay neutral. It has moved to reaffirm ties with Russia. So related to NATO, Beijing's point is very clear. It is blaming the NATO for the crisis in Ukraine. By doing so, it has moved to reaffirm ties. Reaffirm means confirm again ties with Russia, which Beijing on Monday described as rock solid. So China has described its relationship with Russia as rock solid. Okay. So moving ahead, when the two countries' leaders met for a summit on February 4, the two leaders from Russia and China met on February 4. China backed Russia on its concerns on NATO's eastward expansion in Europe, and Russia returned the favor with both criticizing the US Indo-Pacific strategy. So Russia returned the favor to China by criticizing the US Indo-Pacific strategy. Beyond their already deep political and economic linkages, so there's a deep political relationship and economic linkage between Russia and China. These mirrored concerns on US alliances are emerging as a powerful binding glue to the China-Russia axis. So what has happened is, beyond the deep political and economic linkages, these activities by China have mirrored concerns means what? Have shown the concerns on US alliances that are emerging as a powerful binding glue in China-Russia axis. So US alliances have turned in a better way to increase the binding between China and Russia axis. New Delhi will now need to consider how this will impact its close relationship with Russia. This particular thing, the relationship between China and Russia, how it will impact the relationship between Delhi and Russia, that has to be taken care of. Delhi has to need to consider how this will impact the close relationship with Russia by explicitly means ostentatiously, pompously, showing something is explicit. So by explicitly equating the Quad, which is not a military pact, with other security agreements, China now appears to be clearly situating India as a part of the US exclusive club. So what is China has done? China has now also appears to be clearly situating India as a part of the US exclusive club. China is kind of blaming India that it is also part of the US exclusive club, which the US has been trying to make exclusive clubs of some country in the Indo-Pacific region, just like NATO is there for them. Fine. Only last month, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said interested parties were making a lazy analogy of an Asian NATO. Analogy means similarity. So last month only, External Minister S. Jaishankar said that interested parties were making a lazy analogy of an Asian NATO. Asian NATO means the NATO of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization of the Indo-Pacific region. What is Indo-Pacific region? Like Malaysia, Indonesia, China, Japan, India, Bangladesh, New Zealand, then we have Australia. These are part of the Indo-Pacific region. So S. Jaishankar said that interested parties were making a lazy analogy. Lazy analogy means a slow counterpart of the Asian NATO. And India was not a US treaty ally. So India is not a US treaty ally. The statement was made by S. Jaishankar. Indeed, some in New Delhi have come to view Beijing's aggressive moves along the line of actual control in 2020 as a warning sign to deter India-US relationship. So what has happened? Indeed, some people in New Delhi means from the government have come to view Beijing's aggressive moves along the line of actual control. So Beijing is making some aggressive moves along the line of actual control in 2020 as a warning sign to deter India-US. Deter means to worsen or stop India-US relationship. Deterrent means what? Something that obstructs a certain thing to happen. Okay. So moving ahead, India's firm and correct response has been to hold the line. India wants to hold the line of actual control, and continue deepening ties not only with the US and the Quad but also other Indo-Pacific partners. So India has done what? India, in the response to hold the line of actual control, and continue deepening ties. Not only India wants to deepen ties with US also and the Quad, but also other Indo-Pacific partners. To underline, it will not be swayed. Swayed means opinionated, moved, impressed, influenced. It will not be influenced. The other message from India has been that sensitivity to concerns has to be mutual and cannot be demanded from one side when ignored by the other. So, other message from India is that this sensitivity to concerns has to be mutual from both the sides and cannot be demanded from one side when ignored by the other. China's relationship with Pakistan being a case in point. So, China has a special relationship with Pakistan. This is also a very important concern for India. So, the Foreign Minister of China, Mr. Wang, did acknowledge that recent setbacks, failures in ties suited neither China nor India. So, what Mr. Wang says that there have been certain failures in ties that has suited neither India nor China, a view New Delhi shares. The two sides will meet on March 11. The two sides means India and China will meet on March 11 for the next round of military talks to take forward LSC disengagement. LSC means line of actual control, disengagement. Disengagement means not being involved in any kind of movement across the line of actual control. So they will talk about on 11 March about this particular not being engaged along the line of actual control. Okay. As India and China continue to seek a much needed modus vivendi, so India and China both require a modus vivendi. Modus vivendi means what? A pact that two countries will not enter into a fight. A pact that no two countries will enter into a fight is known as modus vivendi, to restore ties from the lowest point in decades and ensure peace on the border. So China and India want to restore ties from the lowest point in decades. For decades, Indo-China relationship has not been good. So China wants that. Both of them want that there should be some modus vivendi. Modus vivendi means a pact, an agreement not to fight with each other. Restore ties from the lowest point in decades and ensure peace on the border. So India and China both want peace on the border. They will also need to have a broader conversation about global currents. They also need to have a bigger kind of talks or conversation about global currents that are reshaping their bilateral relationship. So China and India need to talk about those things. They need to have conversation over those things which are global currents, and they are reshaping their bilateral relationship. Bilateral means both ways. So India is like a consumer market, China is a producer, so it will have a good relationship with India. That is their bilateral relationship. So India and China have to ensure that peace on the border happens, so that the broader conversation takes place about global currents. Global currents means movement on a global level that are reshaping the Indo-China bilateral relationships. Okay, so there here means Indo-China this there means Indo-China relationships. Okay, so yesterday the class could not take place, students. So I hope you enjoyed the session a lot. Thank you so much. We discussed 5 questions of error spotting and we discussed the passage as well. Thank you so much.